of South Asians taking Middle Eastern roles. Please stop. Because Jasmine is Middle Eastern. No, I'm just looking at the camera, not you, my man. Sorry. Very impassioned because it keeps happening and it's really important to Paul's point. And I want to exemplify this. Like he said, just shortly after 9/11, we got an Iraqi character. And that's amazing because Iraqis get zero representation, except for Call of Duty. That doesn't count. But the fact that we had Jasmine live action, it was a half Indian, half British girl. And now we got, if anybody's a One Piece fan, but in One Piece, they're introducing a new arc. There's many arcs in One Piece. It's over 1,000 episodes long. But it was a very clearly Middle Eastern role that people, it's Alabasta, that people nicknamed Arab Asta because it was very Middle Eastern inspired. And Princess Vivi was supposed to be a Middle Eastern character. And once again, it's a South Asian person taking the role. It's very frustrating because, like we earlier said, even between our countries, Middle Eastern is not a monolith, right? Syrian is very different from Egyptian, from Libyan, from Iraqi, from Persian. We're not the same people whatsoever. We look very different. Our languages are different. Our food is different. Ask any one of us how to cook stuffed grape leaves and everybody's gonna give you a different answer. But it's very important to have that representation, be genuine and true, and claim the representational roles that are ours. So I'm just, that's my soapbox, that's my piece. That was new news for what's happening lately in pop culture, and it felt like 2 steps backwards, once again.
To add to that, I mean, that is the dream, right? Is to like find casting people who know the difference between Pakistan and Egypt. It's one of those things where like when you do see Arab actors, they are playing the terrorists, and then when there is an actual meaty speaking role, they are not played by Arab actors. So there is an element of erasure in that sense, where it's like, no, these are the good brown people, and these are the bad brown people. Like you can tell the difference, because we can't. But the dream is to like actually see, Egyptian actors out here, besides Rami Malek, like the one guy, playing roles that were written about Egyptian Americans and playing them honestly and not just casting all brown people as like one entity.
Oh man, you remind me of a time where I was bartending and I was on my phone and the person came, so I flashed like a big smile, like, oh hi, I'm working. And he was like, oh, you look like Jake Gyllenhaal. And I was like, God damn it. Because he played Prince of Persia. I'm like, don't give him like, no. But to answer your question, Paul, about representation, it's funny. My girlfriend and I, we've been rewatching Sailor Moon, and I had a memory unlocked because I grew up watching it and I love it. But there's a period of time where Usagi, Sailor Moon's boyfriend, who's Tuxedo Mask, he kind of disappears and he becomes the Moonlight Knight. And whenever he appears, he's in like that stereotypical Arabian outfit with like his face covered. He even has like a scimitar sword. They always play like Middle Eastern music behind him, and half the time he floats in front of pyramids and with like the moon. And I was like, I blocked, it was like an unlocked memory. And watching, I was like, oh, maybe this is why he was like my favorite character. And so I was like, finally some representation of a Japanese man dressed as an Arabian moonlight knight floating in front of pyramids.
It's grim. It's grim how slim the pickings are. You're just like, well, this one, they didn't call him a name. So.
I know, he doesn't even get it. Well, it's funny too, because watching it, I'm like, oh, this takes me back to my childhood. My girlfriend, she's mixed black and white, but she's like angry for me. And she's like, because especially with the little like trill, like it sounds like a snake charmers in the background playing. That was early representation.
That doesn't play when you walk in the room. I thought that happened to everyone.
I have a same
There's a show on Showtime called Couples Therapy, which is not about Middle Eastern people, generally speaking. But in the penultimate season, there was a young woman on there named Christine who introduced herself as a Palestinian. She's from the West Bank and lives in the West Bank, and was here now, or her family at least lives in the West Bank, and was here and was a contestant on the show, a guest on the show with her girlfriend. And it was a really interesting dynamic because the therapist on the show is Israeli. So there was a moment when they introduced each other and it was like, well, this is awkward. And no one really knew how it was gonna go, and they both kind of stuck with it and went through the show, the process of therapy and being vulnerable. And the great thing I think about seeing Christine on there. She was such a charming person. I think of all the different people I've seen on that show, she was like the most interesting, and the person like you were like, oh, I really want to be friends with her. She's just so delightful to see interact, and you know, she's outwardly gay, and I think that that kind of representation is like super meaningful, because there is certainly a lot of stereotypes about Middle Eastern people. When people can stand up and be like, this is also what a Middle Eastern person looks like, and it pushes back against all those stereotypes, not at all what people associate with that. And then to have somebody who is such a sort of a positive person representing us, I really, really enjoyed that is the view of Palestinians that people got. And that was 2 years ago, and so I've thought a lot over the last 12 months what those two individuals would say to each other in the context, the political context of what's going on in the world now. And just last month, I found a Guardian article where it turns out they've been talking this whole time. They actually struck up a friendship, and they kept in contact, and they were comparing notes and really trying to, from a therapeutic point of view, the therapist and Christine, from a therapeutic point of view, explain each other's emotions and feelings and what goes on in this conflict. And it was an incredibly well-written, very meaningful article. And I wouldn't say they reached a total détente, but you could see them doing the work of trying to understand each other. And I think if we're gonna get anywhere in the process of creating a better world for all of us, it's that kind of approach. And the fact that these two were modeling that so well, I just really love, you know, after hearing story after story after story about blown up children, hearing two people sit down and really with affection try to understand each other, it was really uplifting. So.
Nothing comes to mind, to be totally honest, in terms of what I think is representation that makes me happy and makes me feel proud. I think that is a large part of why I continue to do what I do, because I think that's... Phones off, please.
I don't even have friends. I'm sorry.
We're your friends.
Yeah, right. Everyone's here. Right?
Everybody knows.
Yeah. No, I think it's. I also don't necessarily look to. I'm a little bit older than, I guess TJ and I are probably the oldest people on this panel. So I think the idea of representation is still a weird word to me, because when you're in the 80s and 90s, that wasn't anything that anyone ever talked about or cared about or brought up. So it's not embedded in me the way that it is in younger people, which is it's a good thing, I think. I think for those of us who are older, it's like, what do you mean that we get to also be on screen? That's not a thing that I ever grew up with. So, you know, nothing stuck out to me is sort of the short answer of it. It all kind of sucks, so I might as well just try and do it as best as I can. So put me on the screen, I'll do it.
We'd love to see you on the screen. One of my favorite representation moments is Rami Youssef's show, Rami, on Hulu. I love that it's a comedy, and I love that they talk about serious issues within their community, culture, and religion through comedy, and they make it funny, and it has its dramatic moments, but like I could only, the fact that especially he went to Egypt, you know, that would be my dream, to one day have a show or a movie where it shows me going back to Iran, which brings me to my second favorite representation, Persian version. It's a movie that came out last year, and unfortunately because of the SAG strikes it wasn't able to be as promoted, but it's a comedy film, and it's based on Maryam Keshavar's real life, and it shows them going their family life in Iran, during Maryam's grandmother's time. And it was really, what stuck out to me was the fact that it actually had nothing to do with Iran's current politics, which again is very important to talk about. But it was just a movie about a family, about being immigrants in America. And because we don't really get representation like that. And the main character was a girl, and she was just funny and sassy, and it was just so cool to see Iranian women being portrayed that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, like, representation isn't really something that we all see, but I'm super into superheroes, and I feel like there's never an Arab superhero. We're always like the smaller villain that they take over, like they kill him real fast, and then they go to the bigger villains. And I just feel like, it's true, we're always like the side guys, you know? And I thought about, you know, what hero is the closest to being, you know, Arab, and I'm like, you know, Wolverine kind of reminds me of my uncle, you know, he's hairy, he's angry,
Right?
you know? So I really thought Wolverine was like, yo, like Michael Hammett, like that's my man. Right? I like this guy. And I'd walk around like, shoo, shoo, you know, like there was. But then as I got older, I started realizing like, there's no Arab superhero because no one created one. Like we can't expect the white people or any other people, to be honest with you, to create it for us. We have to tell our own story. So that's why my friend and I decided to create our own superhero. His name, well, the two superheroes are called Crestar and the Night Stallion, and it's an Arab superhero and a Desi superhero. He's Pakistani. And the pitch is basically, imagine you can fly and save people on a daily basis, but you had to be back home by 6 because you live with your Arab mom, and she's scarier than the scariest villains out there, you know? So it's like a comedy, action, adventure. We actually have these graphic novels, and they're like pretty cool, you know, like it's some like legit stuff. But the idea is really like, we gotta take the role. No one's gonna take the role for us. So, you know, I hope that we all can, you know, in our own ways, take the role and create our own stories.
Yeah. Thank you. Wasn't Black Adam in the comics Arab?
There's a few Arabs, and
Is
there's Miss Marvel, who is not Arab. She's Pakistani and Muslim. I think that's the biggest one.
Okay.
We have Dust, who's an X-Men. Very rare, so you're completely right. Like really rare, you know, characters. Miss Marvel is really big, so she's like winning it for us right now. And in her comics, there is Amulet, who is a Lebanese hero. So hopefully he makes it onto the big screen. And then what was your Moon Knight, Black Adam. So there's a couple of like, but their ethnicity is not really, I mean, somewhat Moon Knight, right? But it's just kind of like a side story. At least with Camilla, who's Miss Marvel, we get a lot of her background. You can even see it in the movie, in the Marvels, right? Where she, like in the living room, she has like the Quran in the living room, and it's like the perfect representation of kind of like what our living rooms, or what mine did as a Muslim person, looked like. So if we can have more of that, I'm a big fan.
Well, then they made the Black Adam movie, and The Rock
Yeah.
played him.
Wasn't he the Scorpion King too?
Yeah, he was
actually.
The recycled reuse.
They got the bald part right with the movies.
That's about it.
That's representation right there.
Are you tan and bald? No, but you are absolutely right, Abdullah. Like,
Yeah.
it is about making your own stuff and getting it in front of your community, or everyone really, but specifically your community, and having them rally behind you and let people know, like, this is how I want the world to see me. This speaks about me. So I know a lot of us here on the panel are doing things like that. But yeah, it definitely is. Make your own stuff, get in front of people, and it's authentic. And I think that's what's lacking from a lot of the representation that is out there, is that you don't have MENA people in the writer's room. Or it speaks about like one specific person's experience of what it is to be MENA, and there isn't the nuance to it. That's why there needs to be like hundreds more of us, especially in film and television, who are making, you know, shows, movies about our own stories, like rom-coms and musicals and action films, like different genres, not just one thing.